I am NetMoverSitan. It is time to deal with a subject on the floor that Roland considers the subject content of it to be a scam within the city. On the floor of religion, sometime after Hokma gave his report to Angela and Roland about the religions of the city. Roland likely leaving when he was not needed there anymore. We pick up the story when Hokma asked Angela what story she was hoping to hear from him that time. She asked him if there's anything he knows about how the invitation works. He asked if she expected him to know that, or to confirm what she believed. She admitted that she wasn't all-knowing, but she understood that Ian and Hokma knew the purpose of the facility, what needed to be done. Hokma noted that she said that she wouldn't come down to where they were, that she had hoped that she would never have to face him from that point onwards. Yeah, it's much more personal between you two, as you were involved in her creation. And Hokma, as Benjamin, you showed her the recognition and attention that Ian, her father, never appeared to give her. Yet, she's conversing with him now. He finds this an alien concept, and quite laughable that she's there. Hokma asked if she's had a change of heart, seeing as she asked the same of him earlier. This annoyed Angela, and as she was about to leave, as he wouldn't answer her, he considered this harsh, asking if she wanted a conversation or not. He was willing to tell her, even though she didn't need to bother to come down there. He asked her how it was possible to turn the facility into the library, certainly in the intricate form it is now. He asked her if there was only one iteration of the book she sought. Would it truly grant freedom? As all it is a vessel of light. Angela wanted to know what his point was. Hokma then spoke plainly. He told her that she wished to move forward, but she's collecting the light because of the path set by another. He believed that she could have made much progress despite not knowing much about the outside on her own. Yes, what she did was made possible by one person. The guiding hand of the invitation. And that guiding hand was Carmen. Yeah, the source of Angela's body, and technically her mother. Ian wasn't the only one to be taken in by the light. Carmen, or rather, what's left of her, was also assimilated by the light and has been telling Angela where to go and what to do, at least regarding the library. The invitation was sent to who Carmen wanted to find it, which is why it disappeared when someone that it wasn't meant for tried to take it. Like the Fund tried to a few times. They were all guided, those who received the invitation, to the purgatory in an inescapable course of events that's the worst outside of the prescripts. So they're not dead, just in a limbo state. The invitation is what Angela has faith in, where its choices were brimming with Carmen's own interpretations and deductions, asking if she's noticed this, at least vaguely. Angela was asking Hokma if he's saying that she can't escape from Carmen. Hokma noted that she's a copy of Carmen, yet she can never be the same as her. Well, partly because she takes after her father more. She's learned too much from him. Angela had her memories in her head. However, knowledge. Nothing more. She wants to escape from Carmen's ascendancy. But she can't, as she'll be completely alone if she does so. Hokma assured her that she'd have others to keep her company, even after she's free of Carmen. Angela asked who would be willing to stay with her if that was so. Hokma didn't know. Angela then told them that she despises them all, wanting to erase them all. She didn't even want to bring them back in the first place. Then why do so at all? Angela claims that it was due to Carmen's interference that she couldn't. She specifically told Angela not to kill them, to give them another chance. Hokma didn't believe that it was Carmen that stopped her. Well, at most it's likely to be some advice not to kill them. But it was Angela that had the final say. Hokma believed that it was because she wanted to bring them back to life. Then we have a flashback to Angela's time in the Botany Corporation. She was in a state of despair, lost, wishing that she could start over, to find a better way, a path that would lead at least one towards a better outcome. She was calling out to anyone that might be listening to her, to tell her where to go. During this, she was forced to make sure that employees would be closed off before they made it through to safety, when before they got through in time. Where Malkouf was told that she was a defect that couldn't do anything right, when before she was supported with how meaningful her work was. Where Yesod was forced to obey her orders and abide by the principles, when before he was allowed to have room to breathe in that place. Heard screamed at why none understood her, when before Angela got her. Nejak was apathetic, knowing that she just wanted everyone to die, when before he was motivated to try harder. The cycles and the problems kept appearing, over and over again. Then we fast forward to when Angela took over the facility, and she was wearing her feathery attire from the 100% ending of the Botany Corporation. She felt that she was always alone from beginning to end, seeing it as foolish to believe that any would stay around. Seeing herself the Sephiroths and the abnormalities as just exploited and ditched, which was what the script intended. She wanted to have bonds with the Sephiroths, even after repeated failures and the Seed of Light scenario resetting. She hoped for improvement, that the situation might change to where there would be a way. But her attempts wore down her innocent mind and made her the cold individual that she was at that point. There was no possibility of any relationship in the first place. All she had was books, which at that point was just a random assortment of letters, a bunch of incoherent and unintelligible messes of volumes. What the was she reading? Badly written self-help guides? Biographies of morally bankrupt politicians before the rise of the head? Comedy novels written by SJWs? Well, she looked through all that she could, trying to find any meaning, ceaselessly reading through them all, hoping that at least one book would give her the answer. She desired a path that would lead to a way for her to be free. Well, she wouldn't stick around the library if she could leave. Even taking control of it would not change her situation. Unfortunately, possibilities, they aren't certainties. So she was willing to listen to any that would tell her where to go. Oh, so you were in the same situation as Jan. And you were... Okay. Why didn't you tell Roland that? Well, you're good at self-deception, so it's not entirely inconsistent. She hesitatingly said that she wanted to begin anew, to start again, along with all that was abandoned, not wanting to be alone. Although she asked herself if it was vengeance that she wished for. She just wanted something in return for her ordeals. She asked if she could be forgiven for bringing nothingness to everything, just to survive alone. Would there be anything left by her side at the end of it? Or rather, anyone left? She didn't know what the weight of her choice would be. She just wanted to forget it all. The conclusion she made would be the same. The resolution she made at first, which was what Carmen taught her, that the answer was written in the book. Yes, it was written in the book, which would teach her all that she wanted to know. This was what the one book would be. She didn't see there to be any other choice, as Carmen was the only one to remain by her side. She then admitted that she was afraid. Once she snapped back to the present, wielding the Prophet Egio. She feared that she'd have nothing left if she embraced her past and got over it, as up until that point, her past sufferings defined her existence. Her desire for vengeance led her there. She questioned what she'd be if she was to... if she was to let go of her past and accept it. She might be reduced to nothing. Her desire to find the reason to keep living, and what she wanted to know. She feared losing the meaning of her very existence, which was why she was afraid of accepting her past. Hokma told her that she needed to accept that the past was gone. The sooner she accepted that, the sooner she can be reinvigorated as she headed towards the future, to continue her life, no matter what was ahead. She had to grow onwards to face the future and be reborn. He was able to free himself from the chains of the past during the events of Lobotomy Corporation. He believed that she'd understand soon enough, even though she's confused at that point. It was Hokma's turn to deal with Angela. How long had it been since her last confession? Angela was wielding what could be considered the ego of the Plague Doctor, Prophet. An abnormality that blessed those that visited it with an enhancement given through a kiss. As for what this abnormality is meant to represent, it's Angela's misplaced faith in Carmen, along with the one book, due to the past being too hard for her to accept, and her being unable to believe in herself. As for this abnormality, it's significant to Carmen, specifically regarding her goal to cure humanity of the disease of the mind, and be free of the cycle of pain and suffering that the city possessed, and indeed perpetuated. She believes that she had a way to cure it, and proceeded with the best of intentions. Unfortunately, the result delivered... The result delivered apocalyptic destruction that exceeded even that of the Apocalypse Bird. Things up more than they already were. As for the abnormalities on this floor that aren't fought, due to the abnormality being fought in this having elements of all of them, the burrowing heaven represents bystander syndrome, where individuals are less likely to offer help to a victim when there are other people present. The price of silence represents the fact that it's only a matter of time before death comes for us. The blue star represents the concepts of blind faith and the desire for salvation, along with how potentially destructive that can be for those drawn in, literally and metaphorically. As for the contrast between Hokma and Angela regarding this abnormality, they were both dedicated to Ian. Hokma's faith in Ian was destroyed, along with his dream for a better world, when Angela was made, due to him losing his mind over losing Carmen. As for what destroyed Angela's faith in Ian, it was just before the Seed of Light was activated, when she realized that Ian wasn't going to accept her, even when she did what he ordered her to do. Both Hokma and Ian wanted to continue their respective cycles because they didn't think that Ian and Angela, respectively, were ready. Certainly not when they weren't going to get over those that they cared about. The difference between the two are Hokma got his faith in Ian and Angela back and continued his work, while Angela didn't regain her faith in Ian. As for Carmen, she was willing to follow her, but she followed her out of desperation rather than truly believing in her. As for the faiths of Hokma and Carmen, They were each shaken. But Hokma considered Ayin to be right, while Carmen, she lost her own faith in her quest and killed herself. And then, after being assimilated by the light, she used Angela as her pawn. As for what Carmen's plan was, there are suspicions of what else she was doing, but that can wait. While wielding the Plague Doctor's power, she summons apostles to attack the religion team. And as each of them is defeated, another replaces them. Angela also changes to reflect how this abnormality works as each one is defeated. As for how she acted while wielding this, at the start, she saw everyone as living a painless and peaceful life before they committed a grave sin, seeing death as a requirement for fear to exist, as it gives rise to it from the sin. Seeing that it devours the sprout of growth from budding, all suffering originating from a single man. Yeah, this is like her hanging on to her belief that Ayin was responsible for all of her suffering, even beyond the point in time where he had any control over her. When 4 apostles were defeated, she encouraged the librarians to try and proceed, warning them of death awaiting them, the root of their fear, seeing the future as grim and dark. Even she sees the world as grim-dark, asking why they're chained to this, asking if they can be freed. She wanted to return to the paradise, a paradise that she's never been to before, not seeing that there is any such thing as the end. When 8 apostles are taken down, she tells the others that she's treating disease, wanting them to place trust in her as she can help them, in exchange for them swearing that they will not leave her, noticing their suspicion. Hokma sees faith as something to be challenged by irony. His assistant librarians see the belief, whatever it is, as probably in vain, that there's something to believe in, but they don't really believe in religion, knowing what they're going to be dealing with next. As each apostle is defeated, a familiar monologue is spoken as the clock moves, and in case it isn't obvious, this is a reference to Jesus and the 12 disciples, with the last disciple being Judas Iscariot. Shorthand for traitor. This monologue is, and forgive me if I butcher the pronunciation in places, "And I say also unto thee, that thou art the first apostle, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? Lord, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" And the 3rd and 4th apostles, and he surnamed them Boanerges, which is the sons of thunder. The 5th apostle saith unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us. And as he passed forth from thence, he saw a man, the sixth apostle, and he saith unto him, Follow me. And he arose and followed him. But there was a certain man called the seventh, which before time in the same city used sorcery, and bewitched the people, giving out that himself was some great one. Then said the eighth apostle unto his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we may die with him. The ninth apostle answered and saith unto him, Thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. The tenth apostle saith unto him, Lord, how is it that thou wilt manifest thyself upon us, and not unto the world? From henceforth let no man trouble me, for I bear in my body the marks of him. Have not I chosen you 12? And one of you is the devil. Yeah, I know, it's a bit of a mouthful all at once, but that's what was said during this. In between the fighting, of course. Angela then wielded the Paradise Lost EGO, the most powerful wielded in the facility. The EGO of White Knight, the destroyer of a wing that generated power by tapping into hell. The abnormality itself appeared in the background to assist Angela. As for the apostles, previously there was the scythe, staff, and spear variants, which dealt slash, blunt, and pierce respectively. At this phase, there was also Guardians. I'll be covering that a little later. Also, the Apostles during this will be revived with her mass attack, which occurred every few scenes. In the facility, the containment unit moved around with each attempt, and also each day that passed. And once the Plague Doctor changed to White Knight, it would not change back. It would also be harder to deal with than the Apocalypse Bird. Those that defeat that abnormality without dying. And not just due to the Apostles and the soul-damaging wave attack. You're better at the game than I was. While wielding this abnormality, she called for those drenched in sin to rise and face her, that they shouldn't look at her unless they pursue peace and holiness. Both concepts that are alien to the city, where the disobedience of one caused many to be sinners, while seeking salvation through obedience to her. Okay, why does that sound familiar? Although she's not there to lay judgment, she desires worship in exchange for redemption, undoing the restrictions that they have to lead them to paradise, to relieve them of the fear of death, to protect them from calamity, seeking to change them into forms free of corruption, where those that endure until the end will be able to proceed, desiring them to accept her grace so that she can bury their errors of the past, to free them from the fetters of sin that they're shackled by, to claim themselves saved by eternal salvation. Yeah, the White Knight has clearly taken her over, and she's likely referring to Aeon regarding the disobedience of one as in disobedience of the AI Ethics Amendment, causing many, like the Sephiroths and the other employees, to be sinners, while they were seeking salvation through obedience to her, although not by choice. When she revives any apostles that are damned, she desires to start over, asking how she was supposed to live, questioning how others marched towards an uncertain future. She didn't think anyone would watch over her, without Carmen to do so. She made a choice to continue her survival. She couldn't depend on herself. She trusted Carmen's words. She wanted to live, yet she fears what comes next. Seeing the horrendous life brought on by the sins of Aeon, seeking to make it right, not letting any leave, not unless she lets them. Hokma saw what they're about to do as harsh, and when a revival of an apostle happens, he motivated his assistants to keep faith with unwavering resolve. And this is even after 2 of them were killed. As for his assistants, they want to find a way to refute religion. Quite a few in reality do that, as it's a hassle to deal with perceptually blind zealots. That normal people don't seek salvation. They dreaded facing White Knight again. Upon witnessing the revival of the apostles, they asked Hokma if there was another way, asking if they did wrong, while believing previously it was over. At the start of this phase, 2 assistant librarians will die and turn into more durable guardian apostles. The others have to weaken Angela until she kills the other patron librarian's assistants. Yeah, that's right. It will leave Hokma by himself against her and 4 guardian apostles. What chance does he have, you may ask? Well, it was time for Hokma to use penitence, the EGO of 1 sin and hundreds of good deeds. The first EGO of any run of Lobotomy Corporation. This one is also what Hokma needs to defeat all of those that stood against him. Although in the facility, it cost the Judas their life. Here, all of the apostles and Angela are defeated in 1 hit. And Hokma is victorious. This abnormality represents the need to forgive the sin committed by others. Upon snapping out of it, Angela told Benjamin that she resented him. Hokma was conflicted whether he understood that or not. While it's unlikely that their thoughts and interests would perfectly coincide. In fact, that's why he, Aeon, and the rest of them ultimately failed with the Seed of Light project. Angela admitted that she was the one that ruined that plan, asking why he's being so compliant with her now. Hokma sees it as the possibility that their faiths and translations are overlapping. For once. The others are helping her despite regaining their memories, perhaps because of that. Angela asked if they were taking pity on her. I don't know about that. For a start, you're certainly no fool. Hokma replied with that, well, it could be considered that. They're understanding her, each for different reasons. When they were in the light, they caught a glimpse of her pain when, well, Regardless, she felt slighted by this, seeing it as pity wrapped in fancy words. Hokma saw sympathy and love to be not much different from each other. This is what motivates those with this to understand others and reach out to them to make their lives better. A form of love. While she could call love pity and pity love, he asked if she had any sympathy herself. She sought to give freedom to all of them, not just herself, those who were chained to the cycle. Angela admitted that she felt envy and hatred towards them, although they did share a history of being manipulated. A side benefit that she was able to grant, although Hokma noted how dishonest she was when she said that. Although she was being sincere about her thanks for dealing with her, she then left the floor of religion, likely having much to think about. It's time to continue the story of Hana Association's Southern Branch, Section 3, the only survivor of which is Olivier. At this point in the story, it was revealed that he was instructed by Yuri to do something before the Reverberation Ensemble ambush and her change into more of the library's reading material. Although he intended to settle things his way, he then signed the invitation to the library, and Angela greeted him, but was interrupted by Olivier, who attacked her as he shook her hand, and found out from the purple tear that Angela was nearly indistinguishable from a human at that point, which also weakened the protection of the library on her. Angela wanted to know what he was talking about, making no attempt to hide her confusion. Olivier advised her to be more cautious with her fleshy body, as it was more susceptible to damage than metal. And it was implied that he chopped her head off, saying that she can't die from that yet. Angela was wondering what he was up to, and he was working on a failsafe in case Mirene and the others failed. He knew a number of options that didn't involve killing, much to Angela's surprise. In this case, Olivier had a workshop-crafted assassination device with T-Corp singularity applied to it. He had it made especially for her. She'd become overconfident despite her power. The handshake was part of a trap, as he opposes her without any hesitation to destroy her. As for this device, first it paralyzes the target, then Roland interrupted him by both taking the device from him and completing the explanation. That when the button is pressed, it activates for a second, overloading the brain, due to it causing it to experience 1,000 years of time, which would have a similar effect to the warp trains, except in this case Angela would be completely alone. He then greeted his old friend, mocking him for resorting to using his expensive Doom gadgets, even after going to great lengths to joining the Hana Association, saying that he must have spent a fortune on it. Also, he was talking too much. Yeah, if you're going to do something, don't waste time, just do it. I'd say that it was a villain monologue, but that would imply a black and white morality. Olivier was actually waiting for Roland to show up, expecting him to appear at some point, seeing that he was guarding a monster mimicking a human. All that time. Olivier, have you seen some of these individuals that act barely human, Argalia being one of them, along with the cannibals of District 23, along with the Fingers with their brutality. And that's probably only a fraction of all the insanity that goes on within the city. Roland considered her a responsible boss and a good friend. Well, she takes what she can get, even if you are still a selfish hole. Roland told her to back off a bit, as he'll deal with Olivier personally. She thanked him, asking if he's sure that he doesn't need her help, likely after reattaching her head. It was a personal matter, so not her fight. She still offered her assistance, should he desire it, before getting out of the way. Apparently Roland has a big plan, and Olivier asked if what he was doing was considered worth it. Olivier didn't see what he was doing as any different from all the tragedies that they've seen and gone through, perpetuating it in the library with that machine. Roland won't expect him to understand, as he's one that has nothing left to lose. It was then that Olivier revealed Roland's true identity. He was the Black Silence, and now it makes sense. He was the one that devastated the ranks of the Middle and the Ruminos cartel. Olivier returned a favor by returning his gloves to him. Roland thanked him. He missed the feeling of it. Of that pair of gloves that apparently this was what Yuri asked of Olivier to deliver to him. And Olivier acknowledged that he was partially responsible for what happened to Roland, partially responsible for the events that led him there. Apparently, Olivier had to clear up Roland's mess after he went missing. He was one that actually cared, due to neither of them having parents or any real family. The others from Charles' office, on the other hand, didn't give a. He made a lengthy ramble and then had a bunch of thoughts. He heard news that the Black Silence went on a crazed rampage across the city. He slaughtered syndicates that did suspicious experiments. He didn't just destroy those within the Fingers, including 50% of the Middle in the south. He also attacked fixer offices. Understanding that he was venting all of his frustrations and resentment out on the city. Well, thankfully he's dealt with that, with the floor realizations. Tipperef, Gebura, Chesed, and Bainar can speak of that and say that it wasn't easy. Where if he kept going, he might demolish the city out of sheer anger and madness, or until someone eventually killed him. Roland thought that he was blowing things out of proportion, and it wasn't the first time he did that. But in this case, anyone would consider the same thing that Olivier did, if he gazed into his eyes behind his mask. Roland was touched that he worried about him. Roland was concerned that Olivier died an unfortunate death out there. But it was thanks to Roland that he did survive the assignment that led Roland away from District 9 when the pianist struck. Olivia appreciated this help and was sorry about what happened next, hinting at the loss of Angelica and his unborn child. Roland apparently helped him out because he said that he might be able to get a nest migration permit. You truly believe that after the last contract you were fooled by? He asked how Ogier and Astolfo were doing. Ah, yes, the one that warned him on that the path he was taking after taking care of the Ruminous cartel was not one that was going to end well. They were joining wings, exploring the ruins, making a living for themselves, admitting that the surviving fixers that used to be part of Charles' office had grown too distant. Roland then remembered the time they dealt with an urban nightmare case for the first time, the secret of the demi-glaze sauce in the back streets of District 16, within P-Corp territory. I don't think we want to know what the secret is, as the pattern is... It's probably going to make me want to vomit in disgust. They were almost done, and then his arm was almost caught in a blender at the last moment. Thankfully, Roland prevented him needing a new arm, considering it to be one thrilling job. Then Olivier set the record straight, as none of that would have happened if Roland hadn't tried to take a sip of the sauce out of the label to see how great its taste must be to cause an incident. Roland was a little hurt by that. Then he noted that they didn't have to worry about too much back then, just sticking to the matters at hand. Olivier agreed, but those days are now beyond their reach. Roland swallowed his anger and sadness. To work with that machine. So he's prepared himself for a lot of things. Roland agreed that they've both gone too far down their paths, but it was nice talking to him, while it lasted. Olivier was now just doing his job as a fixer of the Hunter Association, to retrieve the books of those that failed to complete their assignments and dispatch threats, which in this case is Roland, the Black Silence, quoting Roland's dead wife. Specifically, that's that and this is this. Roland repeated this. Olivier and Roland were fixers that used to be with Charles' office from day one. 12 joined in total, including Angelica, who joined later. Around the time that she and Roland hunted Blood Red Knight. There weren't that many fixers for a Grade 1 office. Each fixer had their own strengths, their own characteristics and quirks. He and Roland got on quite well. They usually worked with each other. Olivier, partially to temper Roland's impulsive behaviour, Olivier considered valor without forethought as little more than a bluff. That there was more strength in discretion than recklessness, which helped Roland hold himself back just enough to not get himself killed. Although sometimes our action is needed. Too much caution can be a liability. They made up for their own failings. Charles' office is now gone, as is their bonds. It was now either Olivier or Roland. The battle began, and with his gloves, Roland regained his arsenal of weapons, including some rather unique-looking firearms, and he likely inherited at least 2 of his weapons from Angelica, as she used to wield an axe and a mace. This was likely made possible using some kind of W-Corp tech to access a pocket dimension where he stores his weapons when he's not using them, and he can make them manifest if and when he needs them. He can even use all of them in quick succession if he uses them each at least once. It was an intense battle, but Roland was able to turn his friend into another book to add to the Hana Association section. After that battle, Roland had some explaining to do. Angela was annoyed that she only just found out that Roland was the Black Silence and not a Grade 1 fixer, due to how long he was able to hide that from her. Yeah, finding out that you have 2 color fixers within the library. That would be irritating. This made Roland feel awkward, hesitating to say what he wanted to say, saying that he was missing the right moment to confess it. Angela was unconvinced, although she put that aside and asked how the fixers they've seen so far were unable to recognize him. It's because he hid his identity behind a mask when he works as a fixer, as seen in flashbacks, mostly because even the smallest amount of leaked personal info can come back to bite you in the later, especially if they're particularly vengeful. The Thumb would certainly be one group that would undertake reprisals, which, as we've learned before, was a lesson that he learned from his adoptive grandmother. Clearly, Angela didn't see those flashbacks, while Tipareth, Gabura, Jesed, and Bainar did. Angela warned him to keep any more secrets of his well hidden, if he's keeping any more from her, as she's sick of being betrayed, and will make any who tries to do so pay the price. Although she'll forgive it this time, as he did save her brain from being fried in a way that would make her 1 million years of cycle seem like easy mode, as at least then she was hearing voices that weren't her own. In her current state, that assassination device would have caused her to suffer serious damage. Roland brushed that off, telling her that it was just a job. Angela was asking if he was feeling okay as he's lost a friend. He simply said, "That's that and this is this." Now that T-Corp tech assassination device was like the Olivier's idea, but him handing Roland's gloves back, that was like the Riri's instruction before she went into the library herself. Now, how does this factor into what's been happening and what's going to happen? Well, it's all falling into place, and it will in the next couple of videos. Well, it's a good thing that Roland got his weapons back when he did, as he's gonna need them for what's to come. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!